Luke and Penelope had been married for 3 years, sharing a snug apartment tucked on the outskirts of the city, a space designed for two, though often too small for their growing differences. Both worked full-time jobs, each handling the weight of responsibility in their own way. Luke was someone who found peace in familiarity. He loved the repetition of daily routines, the comfort of a quiet home. He rarely strayed far, just enough to get to work, run a few errands, pick up groceries. Penelope, on the other hand, was fueled by motion. The outside world felt like an open invitation, and she intended to answer it at every turn. Her energy thrived on new experiences, spontaneous plans, and the thrill of social interaction. At the beginning of their relationship, they tried to meet halfway. Luke pushed himself to keep up with her pace, joining her at parties, staying out late at gatherings, attempting to mirror the vibrant energy of the woman he loved. But some things, no matter how much effort you put in, aren't meant to be changed. Over time, it became clear. Luke's preference for calm wasn't a passing habit, and Penelope's need for excitement wasn't a phase either. Their marriage simply highlighted what had always been there. They were built differently. During their first year, Penelope had been understanding. She encouraged Luke to try new things, music festivals, outdoor food fairs, art pop-ups alive with color and sound. She filled their weekends with plans and hoped he'd catch the excitement along the way. But slowly, she stopped pushing. Luke's hesitance never truly faded, and Penelope began to accept that some parts of him were fixed, no matter how many enthusiastic nights she spent trying to shift them. So she adjusted. She started leaving him brief notes or short texts, out with Mia and June at the rooftop bar, or thinking of checking out that new speakeasy downtown. She no longer waited for him to come along. She chose freedom instead. One weekend, feeling restless in the silence of their apartment, Penelope decided to liven things up. She and her friends loosely planned to kick off the night at a cozy cafe before continuing on. She mentioned it to Luke in passing. He gave a small nod from the couch, already settled in for a quiet, predictable evening. Later that night, close to midnight, Luke's phone vibrated in his hand. He called her, not with suspicion, but with the kind of distant concern that creeps in when you start to feel like an afterthought. She answered in a cheerful tone, light and carefree. In the background, he could hear thumping bass, laughing voices, and the indistinct chatter of a crowded space. She clearly wasn't sipping coffee anymore. She had moved on to a nightclub, caught up in the rush of the evening. Luke's stomach tightened. He'd never been inside a nightclub, but he'd heard enough stories to know the kind of crowd those places could attract. Not want to sound controlling, he gently asked what time she planned to come home, offering what he hoped sounded like a reasonable suggestion. Penelope only chuckled and said she still had plenty of energy left. She wasn't ready to call it a night. Luke offered to come pick her up. She declined. He hadn't planned to wait up. Sleep found him as he sat slouched on the living room couch, his phone still resting loosely in his hand. Hours passed. When he woke, the room was dark and his neck stiff from the awkward position. The clock read just after 3 a.m. Still no sign of her. He called again. No response. Just as worry started to take hold, the front door opened quietly. Penelope stepped in. Her hair was slightly messy from the night, but her expression was calm. She walked steadily, spoke clearly, like someone who had simply lost track of time, not someone hiding anything. Luke sat up, ready to speak, unsure what to even say, but she beat him to it. She apologized right away, her voice soft and affectionate. She explained that the night just got away from her and promised she was going straight to bed. By morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting dappled shadows across the room. Luke woke up first. Though he couldn't explain it, a faint unease lingered. Beside him, Penelope slept soundly, a peaceful smile on her lips like she was still dreaming of something pleasant. As he watched her, Luke asked a strange question, more out of instinct than reason. Did I say anything in my sleep? Penelope stirred, blinking slowly. She gave him a sleepy smile and shook her head. I don't think so, she said gently. Why? Luke gave a soft chuckle, brushing off the thought. No reason, just curious. Luke wasn't the kind of man to dwell on worst-case scenarios. He usually let troubling thoughts pass like clouds, preferring not to hold on to them. Soon, his mind floated elsewhere, towards something brighter. "So, when do we escape to the beach?" he asked playfully, a teasing grin on his lips. Penelope's face lit up. That beach trip had been her idea from the beginning. She'd picked out a sleek, all-inclusive resort, complete with ocean views and cocktail service. Luke had been setting aside money for months, skipping luxuries, carefully budgeting to give them both a break from their daily grind. But what he didn't realize was that those savings, his quiet sacrifice, were about to disappear into something far less innocent. That week, Penelope's phone was in constant motion. Messages buzzed in quick succession, small flashes of something deliberately hidden. Luke noticed naturally. He didn't want to seem intrusive, but occasionally he glanced at her phone when she left it unattended. Oddly, the screen was always wiped clean. No open chats, no app trails, nothing visible. As if whatever had been there was meant to vanish. A strange discomfort crept in. If she was keeping something secret, it had to matter, and it had to involve him. By Friday, Penelope was getting ready for another night out, a club, once again. Luke didn't say a word. Instead, he made a quiet choice. He decided to follow her. Not openly. He kept his distance, careful not to be seen. He trailed her quietly as she and her friends headed into a familiar nightclub, the kind that offered free entry to women before a certain hour. Penelope and her friends strolled past the bouncers with ease, giggling as they claimed a table close to the dance floor. Luke stayed hidden in the backdrop, blending into the crowd. From the shadows, he watched her sip her drink and chatter animatedly with her friends. She looked carefree, glowing, even, but what unsettled him was the way her eyes kept drifting across the room, scanning faces, lingering at the entrance. It wasn't flirting, but it felt like waiting. Then the atmosphere shifted. The lights dimmed, a makeshift platform was wheeled out, and a sultry performance began. A group of dancers hit the stage, their moves polished, provocative, designed to captivate. One man stood out, sculpted physique, dark sunglasses, oozing confidence. The crowd erupted in cheers. But Luke's eyes were fixed on Penelope. She couldn't look away. Her expression was locked in fascination, intense, longing, mesmerized. Luke's chest tightened. It had been years since she'd looked at him like that. When the act ended, she leaned in close to her friends and whispered something. They squealed and laughed, eyes wide with excitement. Then Penelope stood up and, to Luke's disbelief, followed the performer backstage. Her friends clapped and cheered her on. Luke couldn't move. The music still pounded, the room buzzed with life, but all felt distant, detached. He just stood there, the weight of what he'd seen pressing hard against his chest. That's when Lillian, one of Penelope's closest friends, rose from the table to head toward the restrooms. Luke intercepted her calmly. "Lillian," he said, voice steady and cold, "we need to talk." She froze, startled to see him there. Her eyes widened with guilt. "I know you're about to lie," he said, pulling out his phone. On the screen, a video, Penelope on the dance floor, too close to a stranger. Their bodies touched with a familiarity that said more than words. Her smile wasn't the kind you gave a stranger. It was warm, intimate. Lillian's expression collapsed. "They met before," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "There was something there. I thought she'd tell you. I really did." Luke didn't react. He didn't need to. The images had already told him what he needed to know. He didn't linger. He left the club quietly, walked back to his car, and drove home with clarity he hadn't felt in months. That night, he packed. Drawers emptied, closets cleared, every trace of her removed from the apartment. He loaded his car like a man with a purpose. Luke had always wanted to move closer to his job, but Penelope had insisted on staying in the city for the nightlife, for the energy. Her preferences didn't matter anymore. The vacation fund? It went to something far more important. His new beginning. Within a few days, he secured a new apartment, signed a lease, and filed for divorce. Penelope tried reaching out. She insisted it had all been a misunderstanding. She pleaded, spun explanations, tried to smooth it over. But the truth was already settled deep inside him. Luke sent the video to her brother, Nathan. The reaction was swift. Nathan kicked her out. With nowhere left to go, Penelope moved in with Lillian, two women sharing a space built on guilt and wreckage. Penelope kept going out. She still danced, still chased the thrill. But something had shifted. The clubs no longer felt magical. The faces blurred together. The flings, the flirtation. They offered little more than a hollow echo. Still, night after night, she went searching, looking for someone who might want more than a drink, a dance, or a whispered promise in the dark. Someone who might actually stay.